All right, so the Cleveland Browns, and I've been doing this whole thing by the way of reviewing each position group in the Cleveland Browns roster. I did edge rushers yesterday. Today we're going to be doing linebackers. And if you don't want to miss any of these previews as they come out every day, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos. But nonetheless, let's talk about this linebacking room because while I think this linebacker room in some ways has a lot to prove and why I think some people are low on it, I actually think that this is a pretty good damn linebacker room. My reasons for that, I'll explain as we go along, but I do think that there's a lot of really underrated pieces in this room that are going to have more of an impact than what people think. But let's get started. Let's talk about all the linebackers in the room. We're going to start from lowest grade to highest. We're going to start with the guys who don't have grades first. Silas Kelly. I don't know much about Silas Kelly. I believe he's an undrafted free agent for the team. He will try to make the team. I doubt he will unless he's a special teams ace. Then they have Willie Harvey, who has been a special teams ace for the Cleveland Browns the last few years. We'll see if he makes the team. Again, he's one of those guys that's always kind of battling for his spot. And then you have Tony Fields the second. A lot of people are really high on out of West Virginia. The Browns drafted him in the 5th round last year. Got pretty much no time. Like, I don't think he got a single snap last year. Yeah, I don't think he got a snap. I'm not sure if he was on the active roster during games. So he's literally done nothing so far. So we'll see what the Browns get out of a guy like Tony Fields, but I don't know how many linebackers are going to make the team. You would assume 6, right? Backup for each spot, even though the Browns tend to like to use DBs in some of these linebacking spots, so they might sacrifice a linebacker to keep an extra DB. Right now, I think you have probably 4 true locks, maybe 5 with Tony Fields being a former draft pick. And then you maybe have Willie Harvey, Silas Kelly, and Dakota Allen kind of battling it out for that 6th and final spot that they keep in the linebacking room. I think that's probably where they'll end up. And whoever gets that 6th spot is going to be whoever is the best special teams player. So I think it's really going to come down to Dakota Allen and Willie Harvey, right? So I think that's probably going to be what that room comes down to. But when it comes to the actual linebacking rotation, there are 4 main guys I think are going to be in this rotation very heavy. And I think they can get away with 4 guys in the rotation throughout the season just because, again, they're going to bring down some safeties to do some linebacking responsibilities, right? So the safeties are going to help in this, right? You have a Ronnie Harrison. You have maybe even Grant Delpit you might want to put in some of these situations. John Johnson is another guy that you could put in these situations to kind of help out. But these 4 guys I think are going to be the main guys, and I think they're all really, really solid players. Obviously, one I think is a gem. But we'll start with the first guy, Jacob Phillips. I think, and if you guys don't remember, Jacob Phillips is a former 3rd round pick in 2020. He had a 62.4 PFF grade total. His coverage, his run defense grade was what? 51.5. So struggled in that area, but he was a good pass rusher and a good coverage linebacker. And I think he can help a lot in that area. He's an athletic guy, and he's a big guy, right, at 6'4", 233. And I think ideally, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you would want somebody with that body type next to JOK, so you can have the best of both worlds. And if you look at where Jacob Phillips, when he was at LSU, where he was at his best was when he was next to a smaller, more athletic guy like a Patrick Queen. So given that JOK is like Patrick Queen times 12, in my opinion, I think that he would be a better fit there alongside Jacob Phillips. Jacob Phillips still athletic enough, still put up a good coverage grade. Now, again, that's 73 snaps in coverage that he had a 69.5 PFF grade, so it's not nothing there, but it's not like indicative of something that's a guarantee from that sample, right? So you got to be careful trying to parse things out there, but when you look at the linebacking room, he's the only guy in this linebacking room, by the way, that's above what? Other than Silas Kelly, he's the only guy that's above 6'1", right? Silas Kelly is 6'3". He's an undrafted free agent. Everybody else 6'1". Like the next tallest guy, the next biggest guy that could play linebacker for this team. I mean, like it's either JOK at what 6'1", 225 or 230, and then everybody else is much smaller. So Jacob Phillips is unique in that way, to where he is a bigger guy. He has a bigger body than most of the other linebackers that the Browns have. Obviously, Takitaki's heavier than Jacob Phillips, but Jacob Phillips is a little bit more agile. And I think he'll probably get that playing time next to JOK. I think if they go into any two, like when the Browns go into nickel, either they'll bring in John Johnson to play next to JOK if they feel like it's a pass-heavy down, or they'll keep Jacob Phillips out there and roll with that. And then when they go into base, we'll start talking about some of the other linebackers again. Like, I really only expect 4 linebackers to get real significant snaps this year. If you look at last year, it was the same situation where really only 4 guys got a bunch of snaps. But I think that'll be similar, where Jacob Phillips and Takitaki are probably going to rotate in and out a lot at whatever spot that the coaching staff puts them in. The next guy we're going to talk about is Sione Takitaki. I don't know why Takitaki is so underrated, but like, people talk about Takitaki like he is garbage, and he's not. He's a 3rd-round pick from 2019, 67.5 Pro Football Focus grade. He was, like, the last few years, was a pretty good run defender, graded out pretty well in that area. This year was pretty terrible, 58.5. Run grades are bad across the board for all of these linebackers. I think that's more indicative of the situations that Joe Woods puts them in versus what they're actually capable of, given that we've seen Sione Takitaki be a really good run defender. But the coverage grades were also good across the board with all of these guys. So that is also something to note. 73.4 coverage grade, actually better than Jacob Phillips was in coverage. Now, he's 27. He's older. He's in the last year of his deal. Again, I think him and Jacob Phillips are going to spend a lot of time rotating in and out. Maybe if Jacob Phillips takes a step this year in camp, they feel more comfortable having Jacob Phillips take Anthony Walker snaps and then moving Anthony Walker into that rotation with Sione Takitaki. But I think as we stand right now, Jacob Phillips, Sione Takitaki, they're going to be rotating in and out a lot. And it's good because when you look at their grades, when you look at their snaps, when you look at what their strengths are, and again, Sione Takitaki had a better coverage grade than Jacob Phillips in 20 more snaps than Jacob Phillips. So it's interesting to see there. Obviously, they don't like to put Takitaki in a lot of coverage snaps, even though he saw more play there. They put him in more run-heavy situations. He had like 168 snaps versus 95 in coverage. When you look at Jacob Phillips, they like to put him in coverage. 41 snaps for Jacob Phillips in run defense situations versus coverage snaps were only 73. So there's obviously a split on what they like to do, right? 2nd and 3rd down, they're probably going to throw, 3rd and 4th or 3rd down, they're probably going to throw Jacob Phillips out there. Sione Takitaki more likely to be in on obvious rundown, so 1st and 2nd down. So that's kind of going to be a split. That was the split last year. I'd imagine that split stays the same. And I know that Takitaki did have a better coverage grade than Jacob Phillips, but I think that also might have to do with the situations that Takitaki's in, right? Certain personnel packages that the offense brings out will dictate that the Browns go with Takitaki in their defensive personnel, which means that he's not going against, like, you're not throwing Takitaki out there as like a Sam linebacker in like empty, right? Like, I don't think they're going to be doing that purposefully. I think that would be Jacob Phillips. But if they have more of a 13 personnel or 12 personnel, whatever it is with double tight ends, then they'll probably go in that direction and put Takitaki out on the field. It's all about what the offense does. It dictates which linebacker you'll see from that set. Okay, so those are those two guys. You got Anthony Walker, who had a 69.1 grade, was 51.2 in run defense, but pretty good in pass rushing, and coverage was really good last year, 78.2 coverage grade in 399 snaps. So that's a significant amount of snaps there that he was pretty good in coverage. Again, what he's asked to do in coverage is not going to be as crazy as what the Browns asked JOK to do in coverage, or even Jacob Phillips. So he's not doing a ton there, but if you limit him to just doing a little, right, just watching the middle, not having too much responsibility, maybe being on the second tight end every once in a while, he will produce good results there in coverage. He's not a complete liability out there, which is a good thing to hear, right? Normally, what you want to check for with a middle linebacker, especially a guy like Anthony Walker, is, hey, make sure they're not a liability when they're out there. The fact that he had 700 snaps, most snaps out of all the linebackers on this team, and graded out at 78.2 in his coverage area, that tells you everything that you need to know about him not being a liability in that area, and him being a good enough pass rusher to be able to get loose there. So that is the three linebackers. You got Anthony Walker, we got Sione Takitaki, Jacob Phillips. Again, I think only 4 are really going to be in the rotation. The other 2 will be special teams players. And you can see how the rotation is shaking out. One thing I'm interested to see is what they do with JOK, because if you look at JOK, only 597 snaps last year versus the 700. I wonder if that's going to flip between him and Anthony Walker. But nonetheless, JOK comes in, highest grade, 76.5. Had a excellent run stopping grade. If you look, everybody was like in the 50s. He was 78.7. So he was the Browns' best run defender on the team, on the defense last year. He was the Browns' best run defender next to Ronnie Harrison and Denzel Ward, which it ain't great. But that your best run defenders aren't on your line of scrimmage. But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, he was an excellent run defender for the Cleveland Browns. In 220 run defense snaps, he was pretty solid for this team. In coverage, he was also solid, 67.4. Again, the thing with JOK is I think he's going to be even better this year, but I think he's going to be better because he's going to be closer to the ball more often. I think they'll be more free with how they move him. I would expect JOK to have the most snaps at the linebacking position on this team this year, because last year they were trying to bring him along slowly just to make sure he doesn't get overwhelmed so they don't ruin a prospect like him. Again, it's good development. Now it's time to unleash him a little bit. I think they will unleash him just a little bit here in this next year. So when you look at that room, right, you have 4 players that I feel fine with in them being on the field no matter what the situation. I really don't think there's an especially weak link on this linebacking room. So I think I would give this linebacking room, I don't know if they got an A, because I got to see if JOK becomes an all-pro caliber player before I can give them an A. But I would say another B+ here. I would say the linebacking room, B+ job here from Andrew Berry in assembling this room, and Kevin Stefanski's staff for developing this room. I think there's a lot to love here. 4 of them. You don't have the most injury depth here, but I mean, you can only have but so much depth in the NFL. The fact that you have 4 guys that you can rotate in and out, plus you have other safeties that you can move in to cover some responsibilities and just some special packages, then I think you're absolutely fine here at the linebacking position. That's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.